in Paris?
Ask me. I'll answer anything. So ask me.
Woo! All right. We are live with the one and only Hannah Judson. Welcome to the TED Show, Hannah. Hannah just informed me, or probably did before, and I wasn't paying attention, that she is in the beautiful city of Paris. So I'm cognizant of her time. It's definitely later there. It's way past happy hour, but isn't every day in Paris happy hour? So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to learn about your journey, to talk about creative living, for you to
Yeah.
perform. So thank you for being patient. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. And everything you just said, all of those things, talking about Paris, which I have to say, I live outside of the city in a little village on the Seine River, very quiet, very close to the city, but different sort of atmosphere. But that creative living, playing music, you said a few other things. Everything you said, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's.
I love it. I love your energy, and I didn't know. So let's hear your journey, but I have to understand at some point how you got to Paris. One of my favorite places on the planet. It's just amazing. The French people are amazing. It's just, I love it. All right. Enough about me and what I want to do and travel. Let's talk about you. Let's learn a little bit about your background.
Okay. So I don't even really know where to begin because it's a long story now. But at this point, I'll say so. I'm originally from Maine, from the Northeast, and I grew up there. And I studied art design and music, and I always sort of had creative interests and a creative approach to my decision making process. I lived in Chicago for a bunch of years. And after Chicago, I moved to France. This was 15 years ago. I had really little kids at the time, and I had just made a decision that I wanted them to be bilingual. I struggled so much with second and third languages. I wanted them to just have it, and I wanted them to have a different sort of outlook on what the world is like. I didn't want them to just be sort of local yokels from wherever we live. And so that was a big piece of it. But it was also just sort of something I wanted to do. I think it certainly makes it more difficult to move to a foreign country, because it was definitely at that time a foreign country. It's much less foreign to me now. You make your life difficult. You have more administration to deal with. You've got all this stuff to deal with in another language, like I need new windshield wipers, or where do I get the slippers for the children, or, how do I pay taxes here? Just all of that stuff. Everything takes more attention, and it can be stressful. But at the end of the day, you go through things, and you go through this sort of peeling off of the layers of understanding the world a little bit differently, understanding French culture, understanding yourself, understanding your own culture. Like my passion and love for America is probably stronger than when I left, because I see it through different eyes. I have big complaints and concerns about it at the same time, and those, that's there too, and worry. But it's just it's sort of like you've got more to bounce off of, rather than just experiencing one thing. You're seeing it.
I love the fact that you took your kids there early, because I just think Paris is basically a global. It's a metropolitan city, but it is just so, when you're in it and you're immersed in it, it's a beautiful world. I love the French language. Of course, I love French sauce. I didn't get my girlish figure from not eating French food, I can tell you that. But the passion that the French people have for living, which is why I love creative living versus existing or working. They actually, in general, they live their lives. They take a breath. Europeans are good at this. They usually take a breath. They enjoy the things that they are given rather than rush through them, which as Americans, we all wanted it yesterday or the day before. And so France is just generally, I haven't experienced that. I love the fact that you wanted to immerse your kids and have the language. I would imagine that would be difficult. You're going over there. Did you know French before you went?
I had a ton of French before I went. I did. And so, but still, nonetheless, I didn't know how to say windshield wiper or, plenty of other things. So
I must know, how do you say that?
I forget.
I know how to ask for wine and where's the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. That's important stuff too. But I was going to say, please quelque chose. I forget. I don't even remember.
I love it though. But you can hear it. You didn't Americanize it. It was beautiful because, when I go over there and I try to speak my French, my grandmother was French Canadian. I sound horrible. It's embarrassing, and I'm sure they're very patient and loving. All right. So why France though, of all cities? Why France of all countries, and why Paris?
Yeah, so it was not the only option. Before I lived in Chicago, I lived in Spain for a couple of years, which I also loved, and before that I had bopped around. I had spent time in a lot of different places. I had studied art in Italy and spent a bunch of time in Vienna and Salzburg at different times, and these were all sort of art related reasons. And when I was a kid, we lived in England for a year because my dad had a thing for a year, so we were there, and all of that just sort of planted in me the desire to live in Europe as an adult. So, but France in particular, it was something I had always actually, I'll tell you, when I was, I think 8, my father's best friend, close family friends, ran an archaeological dig in the south of France. And so all the kids came, there was a whole bunch of kids, a whole bunch of parents, a whole bunch of college students. We all went down to this archaeological dig, and we spent the summer camping in a, what is it called? Apricot. I forgot. I was trying to remember the name. Apricot orchard around this medieval monastery that was being dug up. And so as kids, it was so cool. And in the evening, we would go into the village and we would get steak frites and we would run around and we'd run around the statue of Louis XIII or whoever it was. It was just a really cool summer. And that summer I was like, I want to live here. It was implanted early.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Music. So talk about music. Have you always been obviously you're a creative, you can tell immediately you're a creative overall, but have you always been a musical talent? Have you always wanted to do that with your life, or what was the progression and the journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because of my mother and her guidance, I always played instruments. So I had music lessons, I played instruments in the school orchestra, blah, blah, that kind of thing. But that was not exactly where my heart was. I was never going to be a classical musician. I never loved it, but I did go through the motions for many, many years, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. But what I really, really like is writing songs. And so when I was in college, I did a lot of creative writing and I did a lot of poetry and all that stuff. And when I first graduated from college, I got a job, I got my first paycheck, paid the rent, and then bought a guitar. And that was the instrument I actually had wanted the whole time before. I'd always just wanted to. So I bought a guitar and I bought a Bob Dylan songbook. And I went home and I taught myself the chords and I taught myself a few songs. And then I was like, then my playing turned into my own songs very quickly. Like very quickly, I was writing my own songs. And that's what I really love songs. I like songs about things. I like songs about our experience. I like songs that make you, cry, or songs that that change your state. That's what music really can do. But I like that songs tell stories about our lives, and a good song tells it in a way that you've never heard before. But you're like, oh, but I'm in there too, even though I've never heard it before. So my goal is always to write a good song, and I don't always hit that target.
The process, though, is the journey cathartic for you? Do you find, like, I would imagine, I have never written a song, but I've written poetry.
Yeah.
Or written pieces or short stories and things like that. That creative piece where you're birthing something, it can be good, bad, or indifferent, but it's still your ugly baby, right? That's the thought process. But it's still part of it, but it's cathartic no matter what the final outcome is. There's something about it.
It is absolutely true that it is, when you're doing it right, when you're not just sort of copying, or when you're not just sort of blindly doing it, but when you're really doing it, it's transformational for yourself. Yes. You end up somewhere else. whether it's writing a short story or writing songs or whatever the creative thing is. And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about today when we were talking earlier about creativity as a topic. It's like creativity is such an important part of my life, but I think it's an important part of everybody's life.
Yes.
Because it's not just making art or music or, you know, the standard things. It's like also in the way we design our lives, or the way we approach decision making, or the way we make ourselves feel better when things are awful, you know, the way you see things. It's not just sort of producing a thing, it's going through transformation.
And so where do you find, you mentioned like these are life experiences. You want the song to create something maybe that people haven't felt before, thought about before, at least in that way. So that sounds all good, but for the people who don't know how to create, that sounds very stressful. So where do you get what's the impetus? Where do you get your inspiration, your motivation from?
Where do I get my motivation? Well, I get my motivation from a lot of different things. I mean, I'm inspired by a lot of different things. I'm inspired by people I know who are doing great things. I'm inspired by people I don't know who I see their music, you know, or I'm listening to their music. I'm inspired by things that have happened. I'm inspired by fine art. I'm inspired by good conversations. You know, somebody will say something, you're like, oh yeah, and then that can be a nugget for a song. So I'm definitely inspired by music, but that's not all I'm bringing into what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring in a lot of good ideas.
I love that. I love it because I think that when you're a creative, I mentioned it earlier, it becomes your baby. It becomes there's something about it that is attached to you. And so as you're beginning that process, it becomes, again, cathartic. And I think that people will listen to music, and I can hear when it's the songwriter and I'm moved by it, or it's something different and I think, oh, that's amazing. You can feel and sense what the songwriter or writers were thinking or going through. I think people need to give more kudos to the process that you have to go through. So it's one thing to have this passion. It's another thing to make it your work, what you're working on, what you're doing with your life. Talk about that journey, because the music business is different than the creative business.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about how you got to this point where you're actually utilizing this, or this is what you're doing as part of your life's work.
So this is what I'm doing, although I'm also doing other things. I definitely have a day job, like a lot of artists, musicians, and so I wouldn't want to, misrepresent that. But I think that's just par for the course. I think, people are bartenders or teachers or have a variety of things. But I've stuck with music because I don't even know why. I don't know what the answer is, but I will tell you that when I'm off track or I'm not doing it, I'm unhappy. And I think that the hook that keeps you going is that when you start to create something, you have an idea and you're like, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to explore that. It's always an experiment. So you go in and then you create for yourself a bunch of problems. And the creative process is sort of like figuring out, oh, I've just created a big mess, and then you do something with it, and then you turn it into something that didn't exist before, and ideally you're like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. I think that if I was able to write really good songs easily, like just, oh yeah, I just wrote that. It just came out of my mouth. I just, and here it is, and now it's a finished product. I don't think that would be very much fun. If you were just like a machine.
Agreed. I understand that. Yes. Because then you're not emotionally, physically, spiritually attached to that if you're just churning out songs that you have no connection to.
Correct. And I think it's the journey that makes the connection. It's the solving the problems that makes the connection. And it's also figuring out what it means as you go. Because sometimes I will say things or write things that I'm like, it's kind of a non sequitur, but I like it, so I keep it. And then later I'll be like, oh, that really actually makes sense. But
I love that process. I think that people who love to listen to the music feel it. And so have you, what's it like to perform, which you're going to bless us with in a second. What's it like to perform something that you've birthed and created for the audience to feel and see for the first time?
So that's interesting because I've played out in the course of my life an awful lot. I've played a lot of different kinds of shows and gigs, and I've played in loud, noisy bars. I've played solo shows with an acoustic guitar in little cafes. I've played in theaters and inside, outside, festivals, big stage, small stage. I've done a lot of that, and not everyone is listening to you, right? That's a big deal. And when people do step forward and listen and connect, it changes everything. It changes the whole thing. So just sounding good to a group of people who aren't listening to you, it's completely different experience than somebody that you can just tell, even if it's just one or two or three people, but when they have engaged, that's the environment. It's them.
It's fascinating because I've seen performers in all of those scenarios you described. I feel badly for the ones who are in the loud bars, or I like to call it the dinner theater crowd that talks over everything. And you're like, I'm giving the performance of my life, people. Could you pay attention for 5 seconds and not worry about your 2-for-1s? But it still is it's a good process, I feel like, to go through. And it also helps develop that thick skin, which I think all artists have to figure out how to have, because your message will be heard. I guarantee it. Somebody will hear it, but you have to maneuver through that minutia of all that craziness that's going on. All right, so let's get to performance. I don't know anything about what you're going to perform, but give us a little. And by the way, if I do this, I love to do this live. I want them to focus on you, Hannah, and not look at me.
Okay.
So when you begin to perform, that's how that will look. So don't think I've left you. All right. So tell us about what you're going to perform for us.
So the first song I'm going to do, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll only do one. Maybe we'll talk some more. We'll just sort of play it by ear. But the song that I definitely wanted to share with you today is the first song that I finished that I'm happy with in 2020. And the reason why it's called Satellite. And the title comes from the launch of SpaceX, I think it is, SpaceX. They launched these satellites that are connected, and they were traveling across the sky like beads in the sky, like 7 or 8 of them right in a row. I don't know if you saw photographs of that. It was really cool. And there was just something, I wrote this song, and actually a couple of the other songs that I'm going to be releasing after this one. That is, for me, a reflection of this year, 2020, which has been a really hard year. This has been, and I've had it easy. I've had nothing bad happen. But I think that nonetheless, nobody is going to walk out of this unchanged unless you slept through the whole thing.
No Rip Van Winkles here.
Yeah, and so it took me a long time. So I guess things started getting weird at the end of January, and then folding over, got kind of not sure. And then in March in France, we went into a lockdown. So we were locked down in our houses, and to go outside, you could go into your garden, but to leave your garden area, you had to have a form, a piece of paper. It had to have the times. You had to have the time. 1 of 6 reasons why you were leaving checked, and sign it. It was an official document, and that document then became an app after that. But we were locked down, and you could go outside to exercise for an hour a day, but not longer, because anyway. So it was really tense, and I initially thought, okay, this is gonna be great. I'll be good at the lockdown because I like to be alone. I like to do, I like to have my creative time. But I found it to be really challenging to not feel optimistic. That was the challenge, because when you feel optimistic, you can look into the future, you can see where things are going, and that was completely removed. And I just felt like I saw just fog, and I had a hard time with it. But then I kept plugging away at projects and at writing. But this song, Satellite, is about that plus things that are happening in the United States that require attention and care and love.
All right, I'm excited. All right, Satellite by Hannah Judson. I put Hannah's website, which is a great launching place for you if you want to learn more about her music and her journey. Um, but we are going to oh, I love it. You got the good, this is awesome. All right, so the spotlight's going to be on you as it should be. Everybody, Hannah Judson. Here we go.
All right, thank you so much. So I guess I hope the sound is okay.
You sound phenomenal.
What's that?
You sound great.
Okay. What's got you out of mind? Same thing trapped here inside. We all fall down. One for Jack, one for Jane, one for little Moses. Don't bother now, call it a day. Snake oil is leaking, pour it down the drain. Don't take offense, I just can't believe anything you're selling would bring me relief. Wind blows, seeds scattered, falling between the cracks. West up and slang, can they sing their tune to once? We can't get back. The sun returns with some things to believe in, like the strangest gods by hook, line, and sinker, running straight to their arms. Don't bother now, call it a day. Snake oil is leaking, pour it down the drain. Don't take offense, I just can't believe anything you're selling would bring me relief. Down streets have no name, houses are empty, spring dogs singing out my hand. I might float away like the satellites above it's heading west. Satellite, satellite. Hey stranger, I know you, I lost you before. Cries for help are like the crackling in fire or fever when no one's home. Satellite in the sky tonight, pulls down your shades to sleep. Nothing settles down in the air we breathe. Don't bother now, call it a day. Snake oil is leaking, pour it down the drain. Don't take offense, I just can't believe anything you're selling will bring me relief.
Yay!
All right, thank you.
Beautiful.
So,
I love it. Go ahead, tell me.
Well, I was gonna say I'm happy with that song. That's like, you never know how things are gonna turn out, but to me, that song is a little complicated lyrically, but it says what I wanted to say. So
I love it. So tell me what is the satellite? What's the metaphor there? What are you thinking as you say that word satellite for people?
it is, first of all, a really beautiful word, satellite. It's fun to say and it's fun to sing. But when I was writing the song, I was really pulling from things that were in the news in the moment. And that was one of the things happening right then. But I love that satellites are like in the sky like stars, but they're man-made. And they're watching us from above, but it's not quite nature. It's not quite something else. I don't know. It's like it's a little bit sad, really, that you're looking at the satellites and you're not looking at the stars. I don't know. And
fascinating.
Yeah. Also, one of my favorite musicians in the world, Laurie Anderson. I don't know if you know her, but she's...
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, Big Science, which came out in my youth, was my favorite cassette. I had it on cassette. It was my favorite cassette, and then I had it as a record for so many years, and I just listened and listened and listened and listened, and she's got this one line. So maybe I stole it from Laurie Anderson, but she's got this one line: "The satellites are out tonight." Do you know satellites are out tonight? And it's a beautiful line, and it's just this kind of weird world we're in. It's weird.
Agreed. All right. Do you have one other song, or do you want to? We're getting toward the end of our time. Do you want to take us out with a song?
I'd love to. So
right.
I have to decide what I want to do. I'm going to sing a love song, just straight up.
All right. I love a love song. So we're going to let Hannah take us out. HannahJudson.com is there. You are amazing, Hannah. Thank you so much, all the way from Paris. Thank you for sharing your talents and your creativity with us. So we're going to let Hannah sing instead of looking at my ugly mug. Here we go with Hannah Judson.
So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. This has been a really fun conversation. And the last song I'm going to do is called "Got a Thing for You." You ran the red light, then you crashed the car. It was only a dream I had. But you're the star, you're the star. I always knew those taillights trailing behind you are the sum of all parts, like when daylight starts. It's true. When the sun goes down, you bring the blue. There's this guy I barely knew, with a slingshot and right at you. He's got all night, but pick the wrong guys. You're a fighter, you're a winner. You're a star, you're a dream I have from time to time. And it feels so real, like you could be mine. You are the sum of all the parts, like when daylight starts. It's true. When the sun goes down, you bring the blue. Maybe it's how you show up, laugh out loud, walk the walk. I can't keep the record straight. I like the way you talk. Got a thing for you. I was dreaming.
All right, Hannah Judson with a love song there. All right, thank you so much for being on the show. You all reach out to Hannah. She is so creative. We talk about creative living. HannahJudson.com, all the way from Paris, France. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your soul and your journey with us, Hannah.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
You were awesome. I love it. So you got to have her come back on, share some more of the music that she has, but please reach out to Hannah Judson. Thanks so much. Mwah. See you guys later. We'll be back soon. Reach out to Hannah. We love musical talents like this. So thank you guys. We'll see you soon.